Hey guys, Courtney Love here. Drugs. They're everywhere. I do them, you do them, we all do them.
This guy definitely does them.
But why do we do them? Because life is hard, that's why. Virtually every human being on this earth has some sort of substance that they rely on that helps them take the edge off and cope with the stresses of everyday life. It doesn't even have to be something as extreme as drinking or smoking weed. Even something as basic as watching TV allows us to turn our mind off and keep us sane until our next day of physical or mental exertion. If you really think about it, pretty much everything we come in contact with on a daily basis could be considered a drug. A drug is defined as any substance that alters the mind and body in some way, and most things you encounter in your everyday life do affect you in one way or another. That phone you're staring at right now is altering your brain's chemistry and releasing serotonin. The food you eat is designed to provide you with as much pleasure as possible to the point where you can't stop eating it and crave it habitually, thanks to the habit-forming nature of dopamine. That morning cup of coffee that helps you get through the day fills your bloodstream with a stimulant known as caffeine. And yes, soccer moms, that glass of red wine you consume on a daily basis to help you deal with your kids and get over your divorce counts as a drug as well.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We're all just a species of drug addicts. But why do we even do drugs in the first place? Why do we enjoy altering or intoxicating ourselves for no good reason other than just for pure entertainment? Is the idea of being sober and having control over our own minds just not good enough? Are we really so bored and desperate for mental stimulation that we feel the need to alter our sense of perception through the use of foreign substances? Well, I know I certainly do. Drink up, fellas. Don't worry, it's just water. Well, in a lot of cases, drugs help us cope with our pain, whether it be physical or psychological, and whether it be underlying or out in the open. Why do you think people are prescribed morphine as a remedy for their pain during an operation? But maybe you're not in pain. Maybe you just do them for fun. When people use the term drugs, they're usually referring to substances that are used purely for recreational purposes, such as weed and drinking. A lot of conservative and straight-edge individuals don't entirely understand the appeal of doing drugs, and I'm here to explain that to them. I know for many people, drugs can feel like an escape from the monotony of everyday life and the hardship that comes with it. They add a bit of spice to an otherwise bland meal. Just as a quick metaphor, let's say that being sober is like a chicken sandwich. Don't get me wrong, chicken sandwiches are great. They taste delicious and have a lot to offer and can sustain you for a long period of time. But after a while, you start to get tired of eating the same thing every day. The idea of a plain chicken sandwich doesn't really excite you anymore. What you might need is some hot sauce to add some flavor and bring back the thrill that the meal once had. Drugs are the hot sauce. If it weren't for the hot sauce to liven up the experience, you're not sure if you would even continue to eat the chicken sandwich. I know for me personally, drugs make me feel like a kid again as they bring back the childlike sense of wonder and enthusiasm I once had but slowly let go of as the years go by. I remember my first time trying weed edibles was one of the most surreal and magical experiences I've ever had, at least from what I can remember. Not that I'm advocating illegal substances or anything. Stay in school, kids.
Please don't demonetize me.
Sometimes you just gotta ask yourself, what's even the point of it all? Do we all just do drugs because we have nothing better to do? Or are we trying to fill a void in our miserable lives? You gotta think to yourself, do we really get high because we genuinely enjoy it? Or are we really just trying to distract ourselves from our pain? You would think that an already happy person wouldn't feel the need to alter their perception to achieve fulfillment, because shouldn't sobriety be enough? Well, the only reason I can think of is that humans need entertainment. More specifically, variety. You know how they always say that variety is the spice of life? Nah, it's drugs. Laughter is the best medicine? Nope, drugs also. Money is the root of all evil? Well, yes, but we just use that money to buy drugs. If you really think about it, drugs could be considered one of the primary motivations of the human species. Why do you think that an overwhelming majority of crimes that occur from a day-to-day basis are drug-related? How many deaths worldwide could be directly attributed to drug use or have something in relation to it? We can't get enough of it. It's just who we are. It's just part of human culture to get fucked up.
I'm fucked up!
But let me get into the main point of this video. Why is there a stigma surrounding certain drugs, and why are they seen as such a problem in society? Why are some drugs treated differently than others? Why are people taught to look down on heroin and meth but can't survive without alcohol and weed? Why do so many right-wing conservative Christians look down on stoners but see absolutely no problem in doping their kid up with Adderall? Why do people think that street drugs are completely harmful but see no problem with using thousands of different prescription pills? Are they just trying to stop us from having fun? Or are they trying to protect us from substances that may put our lives at risk? Are drugs really as dangerous as the DARE program and the government make them out to be? It really all comes down to how we're raised and what we're taught surrounding the moral status of drugs. And it makes absolutely no sense why some drugs aren't even classified as drugs. It's always boggled my mind how we classify alcohol differently from any other drug. Like how we always refer to it as drugs and alcohol, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's like saying cars and BMWs. A BMW is a car too, so why not just say cars? The same goes for drugs and alcohol. Why not just call it drugs? Just because alcohol is legal doesn't mean it's not a drug. But I digress. We're taught from a very young age to think that certain drugs like heroin and meth have absolutely no redeemable value, are dangerous under all circumstances, and only exist to wreak havoc on our lives and our health. And we lump more benign substances like marijuana and magic mushrooms in the same category as harder substances like cocaine and crack, simply due to the fact that they're illegal. But that's just simply not the case for all drugs. After all, drugs themselves aren't inherently evil or dangerous. It all comes down to how we use them. And yeah, you probably shouldn't be using meth or heroin, but my point still stands. The drugs themselves aren't harmful. It's how our body interacts with them. No one's making you shoot up heroin. Heroin's not going to come to your house and kill you in cold blood. The reason people die from heroin is because they choose to use heroin.
No. He's got a point.
The only reason certain drugs such as alcohol are perceived as harmless and socially acceptable is because that's how they're viewed in the eyes of the law. Despite the fact that alcohol in particular has the potential to be just as dangerous and life-threatening as any illicit substance. What's the point of making one dangerous drug legal and criminalizing all the rest? Shouldn't it be all or nothing? And following that logic, should all drugs just be made legal simply for the sake of freedom and the pursuit of happiness? Well, probably not, because then there would be a bunch of bath salt junkies roaming the streets and jumping off of bridges. But I digress. It's the exact same logic as gun control. Like how criminalizing guns doesn't prevent people from using guns, criminalizing drugs doesn't prevent people from using drugs. Because as long as they exist, people are always going to find a way to get them. But regardless, I think we should place a lot less emphasis on the inherent harm of doing drugs and more emphasis on how to use them responsibly and which ones in particular to stay away from. I find it funny that the people who claim that they would never do drugs in their youth are always the ones who can't put the bottle down or end up getting high on the regular. It really serves to reveal the flaws of our drug education system. Maybe the problem isn't the drugs themselves, but it's how we treat them and more or less how we're educated about them. Remember the DARE program? Yeah, that sure panned out well now, didn't it? Telling kids that they should stay away from drugs at all costs only led to an increase in juvenile drug use. Good job, people. Oh sure, tell them drugs are bad. Like that's gonna do anything. Like that's gonna stop them from stealing your Hennessy bottle from the liquor cabinet, or copping 5 grams of Super Lemon Haze from their neighbor's older brother. It's just human nature to disobey orders, especially during adolescence, where poor decision making is at an all-time high. High. So yeah, tell them to stay away from drugs. Like that's gonna stop them. Tell them it will rot their brain and ruin their lives. Like that's gonna help at all. Cause let's face it, kids are stupid. Kids are gonna drink and kids are gonna smoke weed. You can't shelter teenagers and tell them to avoid drugs at all costs. That's just unrealistic. That's all they think about besides sex and cars. We need to inform them about what to do when they come in contact with drugs and how to make mature decisions surrounding their use. You have all those parents saying, nah, my kid would never do that. Little Timmy would never do drugs. You should see little Timmy after the graduation party. Let's be honest, parents don't know their kids like their friends do. There are just certain things that kids are naturally inclined to keep from their parents. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, that's just how it is. For example, instead of telling an 18-year-old that they're not allowed to drink till they're of legal age and warning them to avoid even the thought of alcohol at all costs, we should let them know not to drive while under the influence or make sure they have another person to supervise them in the case that they do decide to drink. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I don't think people should be thrown in jail just for using drugs, and especially placing them in the same category as far more serious criminals. Because come on, locking someone in a box for 60 years isn't the best way to handle drug addiction, and it's certainly not going to stop them from using drugs. Like, what do you think they're going to do when they get out? I believe in rehabilitation, not incarceration. I think people should have the right to overcome their drug use, not to be punished for it. Because not all drug addicts are bad people. They even have the potential to be good people. And the fact that drug use is so heavily stigmatized by the criminal justice system only serves to take attention away from actual criminals, such as rapists and murderers. But that's just my 2 cents. For the 12 through 18-year-olds watching this video, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't do drugs. Because let's face it, you will. In fact, half of you are probably on something right now while watching this video.
Come on, admit it.
I know a lot of people take the lazy, simple, rudimentary stance that drugs are just awful and should never be used under any circumstances. And if you want to live your life that way, that's fine with me. But I feel like if you use drugs the right way and don't abuse them like so many people, they really can enhance your life. Don't get it twisted, I'm not advocating that 12-year-olds smoke weed or anything, because that shit really can mess up your brain development and your life as a result. But I think for anything, moderation is key. Just be sure to know your limits and don't go overboard with it, because drugs really do have the potential to fuck up your life if you let them. It's important that we use drugs to improve our lives and not to consume them. We need to respect drugs and recognize the power that they can have over us. We should be using drugs to increase our happiness and not to fill the void where happiness should be. We should never use drugs as a crutch to stay in a shitty situation or as an excuse to put off our everyday responsibilities and not take care of ourselves. Because at that point, you're not really doing drugs to feel high. You're doing them to feel normal, and that shit is whack. So if you think you have a problem or feel that you might have a dependence, feel free to reach out to someone so they can help you deal with the issue and get your life back together. Keep in mind that drugs do exist for a purpose and that we use them for a reason. Whatever that reason may be, we can't take away people's freedom by telling them that drugs don't exist or that one hit from their friend's joint will have them end up 6 feet underground. But hey, what do I know? At this point, I'm just blowing smoke. Regardless of your political or religious views, I think we all understand the impact of drugs on our lives, for better or for worse. I know that you may have been expecting me to either glorify or demonize drug use, but I'm actually taking more of a neutral stance. They can help us if we use them right, but also really hurt us if we use them wrong. They help us deal with pain that may be too much to bear, and can help make a mundane situation more exciting and adventurous. To put it simply, we use drugs to help make life just a little more livable. Or maybe we just hate ourselves and use drugs to make our lives end sooner. But either way, we'll never get enough of them. That's all for this one. Catch you later, crackheads.